Nightingale. Welcome to Season 3 of the Piper podcast, How I Grew My Brand, where we talk to successful entrepreneurs about their businesses. This time, it's all about partnerships, the joys and the challenges of building a business together. Today, I'm with Giles Humphries and Myles Hopper, two of the 3 co-founders of Mindful Chef, the healthy recipe box delivery brand. In 2015, lifelong friends Giles, Myles and Rob Greig-Gran started Mindful Chef to help make healthy eating easy. Well, to date, they've sold more than 3.5 million meals, so it would seem that they are succeeding in doing exactly that. So welcome, Giles and Myles.
Thank you very much.
So what exactly does Mindful Chef do? Explain. Giles.
We aim to make healthy eating easy. We send boxes of delicious, local, healthy produce around the country to people's doorsteps on a weekly basis. And those boxes contain bags with pre-prepared ingredients, fresh ingredients, vegan dishes, meat, fish, everything in between. And that allows customers to cook up at home following a recipe card that's also in the box. So think of it as your weekly grocery shop delivered to your door without much thinking needed. And our take is that it's extremely healthy and it takes away that pain point of thinking, how do I stick to a healthy diet every week in amongst the modern day chaos?
OK, well, we are going to talk a lot more about the brand and how it came into being and what exactly it is later on. But first of all, the partnership. You were lifelong friends, weren't you? So how did you meet?
Well, we must have known each other, for about 17 years now?
Yeah.
Things like that.
Goodness me.
No, a bit longer, actually, it would be. We're getting old, Giles. So we all went to the same school. Myself, Giles and Rob went to Exeter School in Devon, slightly different ages, which actually makes it quite nice. So whenever we go back and speak to the school, we say, don't just think about your immediate peers, like look outside, actually, because you never know what might happen. But sort of around the same ages that we all used to either play sports together or we'd actually spend our summers in Cornwall working little sort of, shop jobs or car parking jobs and actually spend the rest of our time sort of on the beaches or in the surf.
How much of a risk do you think it is setting up a business with friends?
I've heard a few horror stories, so it certainly is probably a risk. I think not being quite the same age definitely helps. We've all got our own circle of friends as well outside of our immediate one. It works really well because you have different personalities, so you don't always clash. There's 3 of us. So
you don't always clash.
Don't always clash. There's times over the years where you certainly do, but, a democracy, 2 always beats 1, so you can usually always come to a decision. And actually, friendship's still there after the last 5 years.
What were you doing immediately before you set up the business? What were your original careers?
I left Loughborough University and originally worked at Betfair for a little bit, which was an introduction to the e-commerce world. Pre-IPO then, and I was there for about 4 years, and then I moved to M&C Saatchi, where I really enjoyed my time there, which was a fantastic experience working for the likes of Diageo and Paddy Power and NatWest and EE, so a really broad range of clients.
What about you, Myles? Because you weren't in business in the same way at all, were you?
No, so I attended Cardiff University and then went to play rugby semi-professionally, sort of around the world. Injured quite a few times with my knee, so then decided I had to grow up somewhat and actually should start working. And also living in London, it's quite expensive if you are injured and not able to do anything. So I was also a personal trainer and nutritional coach, which I'd done for about 10 years, all over the world. For me, what that did, it was all, your own business. You had to start it from the ground up. You had to go and get all your own clients, the nitty-gritty of working for free for about 40, 50 hours a week, just trying to onboard new clients and then retain them. So it actually gave me a really good idea of how to start a business.
Do you think that you had that sort of entrepreneurial spirit within you already?
Well, I'll let Giles speak for himself and Rob because they'd actually spoken about numerous businesses. But for me, my father, he actually had his own businesses as well. So actually just growing up in that environment, well, why would I want to go and work for somebody else and be at their beck and call actually when you can go and create your own business and set it up how you want to do it and run it your way?
And did your dad influence you, Myles?
With this, unfortunately not, because he actually passed away when I was about 16. But up until that point, I think he certainly had sort of that, this is what you can do, go and start your own business. And then my mum's incredibly hardworking as well. You know, she sort of had 3 jobs while we were at school just to make sure we could continue on. So actually, I think all of those different traits from both of them has really helped me with Mindful Chef over the years.
Giles, what about you? Born entrepreneur, made entrepreneur, what do you think?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? I mean, tracing it back through the family, my grandpa was one of the founding partners of Axminster Carpets. But from my own personal experience over the last 10 years or so, Rob and I were discussing a number of ideas over the years, but nothing ever came to fruition. I always had these little projects on the go. So alongside Saatchi, I was running, and actually Betfair, I was running these big cycle rides across Europe. So I started cycling to Cardiff with 2 friends to raise money for a cancer charity. And by the time that event finished, 132 riders was just shy of the Tour de France size, but we were doing it on open roads, not closed roads. So we had 5 support vehicles, doctors, physios, the works, and that was all myself and one other friend along the side. And it expanded very quickly to the point where we had probably 200-300 applicants, and we just said, look, it's alongside our jobs, we can't take that many people. But there's lots of things there where I thought, oh goodness, this could go into being a pretty good business. I ran a big black tie ball every year in London for 800 people.
Good Lord, you were busy, weren't you?
But lots of these things, these events along the side of my job, I guess, showed an entrepreneurial spirit.
So how did Mindful Chef come about then? You know, of all these plates you were spinning, one of them you actually decided to go with. So how did the idea first come?
So it was in the summer of 2014. We were down on a friend's fishing boat near Exeter. The friends actually are builders by trade, but then they have a little fishing boat, goes out, a day boat, and they sell the catch to the local villagers. And what they do is go out in the morning, come back in, and then text, so literally SMS, all the local villagers. We've got X, Y, and Z today that we've caught. We saw them just handing over this fish straight from the ice. We thought that's pretty amazing. And we were discussing how things get stuck in supply chains for quite long periods. I always use the example of prawns when we found the UK's first ever prawn farm in Lincolnshire, of all places. But when we met those farmers, I didn't realise that 99% of prawns in the UK supermarkets are from abroad. And of those, the average time that they are air freighted and then frozen, just sat frozen in a warehouse, on average, the ones that you'll pick off the supermarket shelves are frozen for about 9 to 12 months. And we thought, this is crazy. This is amazing how this produce is being landed locally and given to the villagers. How can we take this to a slightly broader market across the UK? That's where the idea started. And then Rob said, well, Rob at the time was living in New York, and he said, well, there's these recipe boxes. They're taking off in America. Haven't seen many in the UK, but it's quite interesting. It basically cuts out the old supply chain model and runs from farm to fork, so to speak. And that's how the journey began, I guess. We started digging from there on.
Yeah, I think that was the eureka moment. But then we didn't simply just want to be another copycat. You know, we wanted to do it differently. We wanted to have our own set of values. And more importantly, we thought, do you know what? A lot of people can cook a pasta bake or they can cook a chili. They don't find that really hard. What a lot of people find really difficult is eating healthily. So we thought if we can remove that pain point and actually just make it as easy as possible, but also taste really good, because otherwise people won't continue to do it, you might be onto something. And not only will it have a positive impact on people's lives, just in terms of healthier eating, but also we thought from a business point of view, okay, well actually if this solves this pain point, things like retention, all of that sort of side of the business should actually be better than the ways that other people are doing it right now.
So that was the idea. How did the offer evolve in those early days?
Giles had all these business ideas and we picked the hardest one with fresh food, I think.
I mean, it is an incredibly difficult thing to get right, isn't it? It's complicated, yeah.
Yeah, and all 3 of us having no real experience in, you know, the food chain whatsoever, bar putting on some yellows and going out on a boat for a day and, you know, fishing with our friends. But in the early days, you know, it was a very limited offering. It was only 3 recipes you could get, all meat and fish at the time. And we just set up a website overnight, put it up there and thought if people will give it a go and see if there's any appetite for it. And, you know, the next step was, okay, we need to find some suppliers. We need to go out in our little Mindful Chef Del Boy Trotter van with the bumper falling off, but our logo emblazoned proudly on the side.
Did it? It had the logo?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That's where we spent our early money. Make sure you've got the logo. We were very lucky to grow up with amazing suppliers right on our doorstep.
So you started local?
All around Devon and Cornwall, and smaller, very small farms, and essentially we'd have to go and beg the farmers to actually supply us, because when people are supplying you with, I don't know, 10 steaks or whatever, they're a bit like, is this worth my time? But we managed to persuade them over time, and they started to believe in us a little bit more, and we said that it will come, stick with us, and then just got ourselves a very small unit warehouse, no bigger than this room we're in actually. I think it's a bit smaller, and worked from Rob's apartment behind Waterloo.
And it went from there?
Yeah, we set up, I think it's a Shopify store, off the shelf, got the website going pretty quickly. We all read the Eric Ries's book, The Lean Startup, and basically thought, well, look, just get an MVP out the door. Let's just see if people actually want to buy these healthy meals. This was April 2015 when we officially launched it to the world, so to speak, the world being our friends and family.
Yeah, quite a small world at this point.
I think the first week was about 10 orders, maybe 11.
And the first recipe was designed by who?
By us initially.
And what was the first recipe?
I think we had a lasagna, like a healthy take on lasagna, because we've always been gluten-free and dairy-free as well, and that was by the nature of not wanting to use any processed ingredients. And actually, if we call ourselves Mindful Chef, we need to really be able to cater for everyone.
So low carb?
Yes.
But it's not about losing weight, is it?
No, it isn't. So we've really tried to look at health from a holistic point of view, and we only do evening dinners. So we're not catering for the rest of your day yet. Might do in the future. But it really is just trying to help people find a bit more balance. It's trying to take out some of the things that maybe you shouldn't necessarily be eating lots of, replacing it with just more vegetables, better quality ingredients. We use some of the very best suppliers across the UK, free-range chicken, 100% grass-fed beef, and just removing some of those ingredients that you can still eat, but actually you're probably eating a bit too much of it in your diet. Some people will lose weight using Mindful Chef. Others, we have athletes from Team GB who use it, they're not trying to lose weight. And you have cyclists who are having to eat 5,000 calories a day or whatever, and they'll still include Mindful Chef just because it gives them a varied diet every single week. They get to cook different recipes as well.
What I want to talk to you about is the brand, that Piper focus on understanding what makes a brand better and different. That's what they're all about. The food delivery market is quite busy, isn't it? And it is getting busier. What makes you at Mindful Chef better and different?
I think it all ultimately comes down to the ingredients. When we started out, we knew there was HelloFresh and Gusto. For us, it was all about how can we be different? It's the health proposition. And how can we also take that to another level? Well, let's ensure that we are the very best quality. Think of us as the Waitrose of the recipe box world. When we actually dissected what they were doing, there was no free-range chicken. There was lots of fish flown in from air freighted from abroad, and we said, well, let's keep it local. Number one, let's promise never to air freight in any meat or fish, and then let's make sure that the quality we're using from the UK is of the very highest standards. So I think you've got this quite impressive meal that you've created from ingredients that you probably wouldn't have used, whilst also hitting that pain point that Myles alluded to earlier, which is we're actually making healthy eating genuinely easy, because if you ask most people, they do want to be a little bit healthier.
What about the price? I have a confession here. I've never ordered a recipe box, right? I'm probably one of the few people. I obviously will now, evidently, but I never have, because it's always, in my mind, it's felt like an expensive luxury option. So persuade me that I'm wrong. Giles?
It's on average about £7 per person per dinner. So lots of friends initially would say to me in the early days, would go, well, I'd probably spend about £5 on my dinner if I swing by one of the supermarkets, grab and go. When I then asked them initially, okay, well, yeah, it probably is a couple of pounds more then if you base it on that. But next time you drop into a Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Waitrose, etc., just let me know how much you do spend. And what you normally hear back is, actually, I probably did spend 15, 20 quid because I picked up a load of unnecessary stuff that I didn't go in thinking I needed, crisps, dip, etc., etc. So number one, I think people's perception of their shopping bills is slightly warped. But I think actually the main point, which I find a really interesting one, and actually it's a bit of a challenge for us from a marketing perspective to get this across, because people say it, but how you put it succinctly to prospective customers is an interesting one. It is the cognitive load element. So it's the planning element of your weekly shop. Essentially, what we hear from people is you completely take any of the planning and the cognitive load and the stress sometimes of thinking about what's for dinner, the WhatsApp conversations with my partner at the end of a busy day. Are you sorting dinner? Am I? Oh, can you just nip by the local Tesco Express? Oh, well, you're closer. Can you do it tonight? Please don't just get spag bowl again. It's on repeat. All of these small little things add up. And actually, what you hear from people on the review sites is, do you know what? For an extra, in relative terms, a very small amount of money every week, I just don't have to think about it. And this box lands on my doorstep once a week. I open it, I pop these little paper bags into my fridge, and I know that for 2, 3, 4, 5, however many dinners they choose with us, I know that it's just sorted.
The thing you said that really chimes with me is taking away the headache of it, because I think the biggest hassle with cooking in the evening is working out what to cook. The other thing that I wanted to ask you about is the concept of waste. But presumably there isn't any waste or much waste with getting a recipe box, is that right?
Food waste is a massive problem, and a lot of the time it's out of sight, out of mind for people. And one of the great things about recipe boxes are there is none. It's all pre-portioned when it gets to you. So what you get, you will use all of within that recipe.
You're listening to the Piper Podcast, and I'm talking to Giles and Myles from Mindful Chef. As you know, Piper believe there are these key inflection points in a business where there needs to be a step change, and they call it 7-17-70, which is, turnover or number of sites or number of people or whatever. Tell me about the challenges of the early years of the business. I'm thinking perhaps in terms of 0 to 7 million or I don't know, 0 to 7 people. You started with 3 people anyway, didn't you? So talk to me about that very early point and the challenges that you found.
In terms of people, it wasn't actually too difficult. When you're starting out a business, I think you're able to onboard really good people, just really smart, hungry people who believe in your vision and your goals and just, want to contribute their all to the business. And getting to 7 was fine. There weren't any real headaches there. It was probably more actually on the financial side. I don't think we ever realised how much money we would need with this business. There's a lot of infrastructure that goes behind it, a lot of technology needed in order to... we were doing 300,000 ingredients through a warehouse and we only had 3 guys looking after the operational side. So really it was finances and funding rounds. Recipe boxes were still in their infancy. Everyone had seen HelloFresh and Gusto. They couldn't really tell how we were different. After our first fundraise, everyone was going, we can see it now. We can see how you're different. But it was really going out and persuading people that we did have a unique proposition.
Do you wish that you had sought funding earlier? Is that what you're saying? That you were sort of naive, maybe financially to begin with, Giles?
Yeah, I'd say so. My reflection on the first few years was incredibly tough. And the 7 million point actually was quite a turning point in that when Piper invested it, or when we were discussing investment, it was around the 7 million mark. It was actually, we were growing so quickly, but by the time they invested, revenues were a lot higher than that. But I feel those first 3 years, say, were very rewarding but very challenging in that I think, to your point, Mary, we definitely underestimated the need for funding early doors. And secondly, we had a very small team, as Myles said. So there was us 3. And then I think up until last year, there was probably maximum 14 of us. And the point there is that we were essentially trying to do everything without that level of funding. The business was growing at 170% year on year. We didn't have a big infrastructure. So we just kept on growing at a pace and essentially doing everything ourselves. One of us would drive the van, whilst the other one would be on Instagram uploading the latest marketing campaign, and you'd also be reading the manifest about where your next drop was. Plus,
sorry, I love how you just call that a marketing campaign back in the day. That was probably a picture of Giles driving the van or something.
That'll do.
Yeah.
But things must have gone wrong in those early days.
There was one good example when we launched the first vegan range. No one else was doing it, and we spotted this trend and thought, let's go for it. We got about 50 press boxes lined up.
100.
Was it?
Yeah, I remember, because it was 3 digits. I remember.
It was a lot. And we got them all lined up, ready to go. And in there was tofu, and we'd obviously never shipped tofu because we hadn't done vegan dishes before, and we got the tofu ready. And we got to the end of the packing line, and this was again when we were still packing ourselves. It was us three plus maybe 5 helpers, of which a lot of the time it was friends or family. And we were in the warehouse, and it got to the end of the day on a Sunday. It was about 7 p.m, and the couriers normally would come at the end of the day and pick up the boxes. And we realised we run out of ice packs. And we had underestimated the fact that the tofu that we had ordered needed ice packs. Some tofu's ambient, this one wasn't. So the ice packs we had were 2 connected in the middle, and you could just snip the scissors down the middle, and if you were careful, you could separate them and you could double up an ice pack. So that's what we did, and we thought successfully. The boxes went out, and then the next day we got a phone call from an editor at the Times who just said, "Thanks so much for the lovely, healthy vegan box. Unfortunately, I opened it on the floor, and as I picked up the box, the entire bottom just fell through, and it was soaking wet, and one of the ice packs had been nicked." And we got calls like this throughout the day. So, I mean, that was our first example of, wow, we're really trying to push the boundaries here, launching the first ever vegan recipe box in the UK, and we've delivered probably half of them as soggy boxes to journalists.
When Giles is saying about the early days being hard, they were certainly hard. What I was trying to allude to, actually, when there's 7 of you in an apartment, it's very different to when there's, we now have 40. Then you do really need more structure within the business. So that's what I was alluding to there.
How did you fund the business in the early days?
Yeah, so self-funded initially, and then we had a very early round, angel investors, a couple of 100,000. And then because actually a lot of the institutional investors were sort of saying, we'll see how you get on in the next year or so. So we thought, okay, well, we'll have to go and crowdfund then because there isn't any other option. But actually, it's turned out, looking back, it was a fantastic option for us. I remember being stood in a pub with Giles and Rob just before we launched on Cedars in 2016 was Cedars, and we hadn't paid ourselves for 3 months. I think we paid the couple of staff we had. We thought, well, we really have no option, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but we're going to have to go on anyway, and set the target for about 400,000, I think it was, and actually managed to raise $1 million in 12 days. So we took it down before we gave away too much of the company.
Wow.
But the great thing was actually from that sprung hundreds of investors. They were customers, essentially, who really believed in the business passionately. And then also we had some high profile customers as well, which we didn't realise until we launched. The likes of Victoria Pendleton, who'd been a customer for months under a different name. And also Sir Andy Murray came on board as well as an investor.
Investors. Oh, wow.
I remember we were sat in the apartment, and Victoria actually rang up the customer service line, which was a mobile, I think, back then, and just said, I see you're fundraising. I'm actually a customer. I'd love to invest. And she's been fantastic ambassador for the business ever since.
Well, I was going to ask you about ambassadors, because you've got Fern Cotton, haven't you, who's also a high-profile user of your recipe boxes. How important is it to have, celebrity supporters?
I think for us, celebrities are great. We built the business off of sending free boxes out to high-profile people, and we never said you had to do anything. We just said, if you like it, we're a small business. We'd be very grateful if you could just, give us a shout out or whatever it might be. And actually, we gained a lot of momentum from that. But truly, where Mindful Chef uses ambassadors is actually at a more ground level. It's actually using your local Pilates teacher who actually does something else as well. So we have a Pilates teacher who actually teaches Pilates to refugees as well. They hold those sorts of classes. So it's actually, they have a big impact within their small communities, and you're able to bring people on to sort of the mission of Mindful Chef, and we're able to create a bit more buzz around it.
What prompted you to take additional funding? At what point did you decide, okay, we need to do more now?
I mean, number one, we were growing very quickly, and there is a big sea change going on in the e-commerce grocery space. Currently, the UK is actually a leader globally with about 7% penetration of groceries being online. That's quite remarkable, really, that it's a leader and it's still at 93% is offline. It's a huge vertical of consumer spending. And so for us, we thought, well, let's maintain our foothold, essentially. We're probably the 3rd largest in the UK, behind HelloFresh and Gusto. We see ourselves as totally different because of the health proposition, but our biggest barrier is just awareness. If you were to go outside London and ask people whether they'd heard of Mindful Chef, you'd have about 99%, no, I've never heard of them. So I think for us it's awareness. Let's raise some capital. Let's find an institutional investor that we can see ourselves getting into bed with long term. Let's go and raise the right amount of capital and let's continue to scale the business up. We don't really need to change too much in terms of the methods we've been using. I think it's more just expanding the team, providing a bit more structure. And we had talked to a number of institutional investors over the years, but it felt the right time.
So you chose Piper. Explain to me the process and how you came to select Piper as your investment partner.
We actually got to know many of the team over the course of Mindful Chef's journey, actually. So, the previous sort of 2 years actually been in touch with the teams, whether it be at various discussion panels or wellness events or whatever it might be. Actually, what really drew us to Piper was their work with great premium brands and actually understanding the purpose behind brands as well. We've spoken a lot about the proposition of Mindful Chef and it is healthy eating made easy, but there's actually a big story behind what we do in terms of when you become a customer and the community you get involved in, some of the charitable aspects, the fact we're a B Corp, so we do things differently and we're trying to change the way that businesses operate and actually, have a bit more of a positive impact on the wider society, not just within Mindful Chef and everything that's happening there. And Piper really believed that and got on board with it. And like Giles said, you have to look at a partner that actually you think you'll be able to work with in the good times and the bad. This isn't a short stint for us. We built this from the ground up and we are in it for the long run. So really you have to have people on board that believe in what you're trying to do, your mission, and then also that you can work with.
You started off, all three of you, doing everything. How have the roles divided out now?
Yeah, you have to do everything, I think. Yeah. That's the problem.
But to begin with you do, but then things have to sort of divide up, don't they? Because you can't all do everything.
Absolutely. Naturally, for myself and Giles, it was always going to be on the marketing brand side. Rob is very numerically gifted and operationally as well. So for us, it was, okay, well, let's focus in on what we're really interested in and more importantly, what we're actually really good at. So, Rob wanted to focus more on operations and tech. Giles, it was more the marketing and especially the performance side, so the growth. And then for me, latterly, it's more the marketing brand and sort of the community piece. And with that, actually, we decided to bring in a CEO. I think it's 1 year anniversary the other
Tim
week.
Lee, isn't it?
Tim Lee, yes. And actually we took the decision to bring him in pre-Piper, and actually I think it was a really astute move, a good move from us. A lot of founders don't want to relinquish power, but at Mindful Chef we've always tried to bring in really smart people around us and actually utilise their skills, and actually it's been a great addition to the team.
Yeah, I mean, as entrepreneurs I think it's very easy to cling on for dear life, and you read a lot of stories like this where sometimes it really does work and a lot of time it really doesn't, where you cling on to trying to control everything, and if you do that I think you often will stunt the business's growth and progress, whereas you should understand that there are always going to be better people in any area of the business than you. They may not know the business as well as you, but they will be able to come in and add a lot more value if you empower them and give them autonomy and choose the right people. For us, it was just about bringing someone in with a bit more experience, in Tim's case, a lot more experience in the food space and particularly the online food space, and allowing us to flourish in our respective areas, which has helped massively, I think.
Do you think you're unusual, in a sense, being so clear-sighted? Because when you meet entrepreneurs, they often find it very difficult to remove themselves in the way that you've described. They're so close to it.
I think, to be honest, by the point we'd sort of made the decision, we were all craving it anyway. We wanted to have more structure in the business. Mine and Giles and Rob's actually time is, always spent doing lots of different things. Right now we're here, we're not in the office. They'll be having a team meeting this morning. Luckily, Tim will be leading that. So we're always doing all these different things as well as actually trying to grow the business and the day jobs. Don't get me wrong, we're still heavily involved in all of the decision making. We have our weekly leadership meetings, which is, myself, Giles, Rob and Tim. And ultimately the decisions still do come from all of us as a collective. It's just Tim's able to look into the future a bit more, give a bit more clarity, give a bit more reporting up, reporting down. So I actually think it works really well.
What do you think were the main challenges of moving from, to return to the 7-17-70 model? Between 7 and 17, you're now well on your way to 70, aren't you? But in that sort of intermediate stage, what were the main challenges, do you think, Giles?
I guess that's really easy to answer, isn't it? Because it's something that's happened since the Piper investment. It's been scaling the team. So it's been going from 3 mates plus probably 10 staff in the department to 2 offices now. We've now got 45 staff. The business is still growing at about 160% year on year. Revenues have shot up, and suddenly the challenge has been to scale that staff base, bring in people who we believe are a great addition to the team culturally as well as obviously performance-wise. We don't have an HR person, we don't have an office manager, we don't have any executive assistants or anything like that. In our case, we've been interviewing everyone. We've been going out there finding people proactively on things like LinkedIn. But I think it's been that process of hiring, onboarding people, making sure that we've got the right people and finding very driven self-starters. And a lot of time has been spent, I guess, between that 7 to 17 phase, investing time in people.
How difficult has it been? How difficult is it to maintain your friendship between the three of you?
We all have our own circle of friends as well, outside of myself, Giles and Rob. Look, there probably have been times where we've got on each other's nerves, but the good thing about being friends is that you can actually tell people exactly what you think, which we've never shied away from. It's a bit more difficult actually if you have staff members, you can't necessarily do that. So actually between us, we're able to tell it exactly how it is. And as I said, because there's not 2 of you, there's actually 3. There's generally always a general consensus around it. So, no, we still are all good friends, still getting on. I'll get a lift back with Giles after this. So
No, you won't. You'll be walking in the rain.
And what about the best bits, if you were to think of highlights? It's not been that long, has it? What,
No.
5 years?
Yeah.
One would be our work with One Feeds Two, which I'm incredibly proud of. For every meal our customers buy, we donate a school meal to a child living in poverty. At the moment, all of our meals go to children in Malawi. We've now done over 1.5 million. I think we'll do 1.7 million by the end of this month, which is incredible for a small business. And you just think if more people got involved, like how much more of a bigger impact we really have. And that's something I'm really proud of, because it's not just us doing it, it's also our customers getting involved, and it's something that they can feel a part of as well. And then from a very personal point of view is sort of when you look back, we had our summer party not too long ago, and there's 45 of you, and you think, wow, look at all these people having a really nice time. And I remember I was chatting with one of the girls who's been with us since the beginning, and she was like, isn't it amazing just how many people are now involved in this and really feel a part of the business? And yes, it's been a struggle at times to maintain the culture, but we have managed to. And actually, when you get people bought into the mission and they're all sharing a similar goal, actually it's just a really nice environment to be around.
For me, it's forming not just a business relationship, but friendships with some of our most loyal customers, members of the public, and also some of the well-known faces like Victoria Pendleton, who has said to us, look, I really, really believe that this is the future of healthy eating. Or it might be the 21-year-old nurse who we started delivering boxes to in the early days, who said, look, I don't have that greater income, but you transformed my life. I'm eating so much better, etc. And you get to know these people on a daily basis. And I think that's a general feeling of, wow, we're actually accomplishing something quite amazing here.
What next for the business? What's going to drive the next stage of growth?
I think 2 things. One is continuing to grow the core of the business, which is the recipe boxes. That is only going to grow because of the sea change of fresh groceries going online. But for us also, there is quite an exciting opportunity to expand into other areas of healthy eating. We've developed a frozen range. We launched that probably 3 months ago now. And with very, very little pushing, it's over the £1 million revenue mark already as a standalone product line, which is really exciting because we haven't done much pushing that, and it does enable us to have other conversations as well with other partners to potentially utilise other channels. The exciting thing for moving forward from here and over the next couple of years is being more relevant more often.
What do you put your success down to? I mean, how much of it is luck? How much of it is timing? How much of it is just sheer talent?
Timing's massive. For us, we jumped feet first in at a time that has seen, as we've talked at length about groceries going online fast, and at exactly the same time, health and wellness rising to the fore. We always say that back when, even when I was at university, these companies like Lululemon and Sweaty Betty, they certainly weren't mass market. People weren't walking around parks in jogging bottoms, and there weren't huge park runs up and down the country. And we sit in that sweet spot really nicely between those two mega trends, really. And so I think it's down to timing. And then my other thing would just be, from our perspective, dogged persistence in terms of saying we really, really do believe in this, so let's really follow it through. I mean, I remember the early days when we were doing Monday to Friday in the office, which was an apartment, and then Saturday and Sunday at 6 a.m. till about 6 p.m. we would be down in the warehouse doing the packing ourselves, and it nearly did break us. And so that really is just a will to just strap in and really go for it, because we truly believe that there was a need for it down the line.
Yeah, I think actually we had a really strong proposition as well. You know, there were other companies who entered the UK market at the same time, who are well funded and actually operate in different countries around the world, and exited, 2 years later because they couldn't compete with HelloFresh and Gusto because the proposition wasn't any different. Whereas we've actually managed to flourish in the last couple of years, and whilst everyone else has put their prices down, Mindful Chef has put their prices up, and we've continued to grow at 160, 170%. So I think timing is really important, but it's also, like Giles said, the dogged determination, and also just saying, do you know what? Yes, we could copy somebody else's model and do it like they do, but how about we tear that up and do something really different and something that we're passionate about? Because if you're passionate in something, when you are working, actually it wasn't until 6 p.m. on the Sunday, Giles, we had to do customer service after that. Yeah. So it was until about 11 p.m. when some DPD driver's throwing somebody's box over a gate, You have to be passionate about what you're doing, otherwise you wouldn't continue doing it.
So what advice would you give to other would-be entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs who are, perhaps further back in the journey than you are?
Make sure that you are fundamentally different and that you build a brand that stands for something. I think that will be a long-term trend as well, about making business that's more than just about profit. So in our case, it was about making sure that we're accredited as a B Corp in the early days. And I think points of difference like that really help you stand out to the consumer, who ultimately you can sit and analyse as many strategy decks and data points, etc. But ultimately, what you look like and what your product feels like in the hands of the consumer is fundamentally what will make or break the business long term.
How would you want your customers to describe you?
I loved my job and being a personal trainer and having a small positive impact on those people that I saw every day. For me, it was the ability to be able to speak to a far larger audience and have that sort of positive impact on more and more people. So as long as people kind of saying, do you know what, Mindful Chef, it makes my life a bit easier, a whole lot better. It's given me the enjoyment back of cooking. Cooking shouldn't be a stress, it shouldn't be a chore. It's a shared experience with like loved ones or whatever, and you sit down for a meal and you have those interactions. And actually, I'm able to give back through, just contributing to this business.
I would agree with all that, and I'd say that people probably, I'd hope, would describe it as this amazing like-minded community. There's these people helping each other out, sharing tips, sharing tricks, not just of the food itself, but actually slightly broader lifestyle points and health points. And having this amazingly powerful community is certainly something that I hope others talk about, in saying that it's full of like-minded people who just want a slightly healthier lifestyle. With a very small change to the way you shop, you can have a massive impact on the way you live. I think that is how I'd like people to describe it.
I think you've converted me. It's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you very much, Myles and Giles.
Thank you very much indeed.